Most people think Saddam's death ended the story. Wrong. That's just when it got insane. His sons, taken out in one of the wildest firefights of the war. His daughters, hunted across borders, wanted by Interpol. We're going to unravel where they went, who survived, and why some Husseins are still making headlines today. Chapter 1. Sons and Heirs. Saddam Hussein's two sons, Uday and Qusay, were once poised to inherit his Iron Throne, but their story ended in a blaze of gunfire. Both men had reputations so vicious that many Iraqis actually celebrated when they heard U.S. forces had killed them in Mosul. Uday, 39, was Saddam's firstborn and originally the heir apparent. His love of luxury was matched only by his brutality. He amassed hundreds of luxury cars and was notorious for violence, even beating a man to death at a party. Conduct so extreme that it troubled his father and got Uday briefly jailed. Qusay, 37, was quieter, but no less lethal. After proving his loyalty by brutally crushing a 1991 Shiite uprising, Qusay was entrusted with commanding the elite Republican Guard and secret police, making him Saddam's favored successor by the late 1990s. Together, the brothers personified the feared future of the Hussein dynasty. When the U.S.-led invasion toppled Saddam in 2003, Uday and Qusay fled into hiding. Their last stand came on July 22, 2003. Acting on a tip and a $30 million bounty, American Special Forces surrounded a villa in Mosul where the brothers were holed up. They immediately began smashing that like button, just like you should if you haven't done so already. But no, in all seriousness, they immediately started planning the operation. A fierce 4-hour firefight erupted. U.S. troops even fired 10-tow anti-tank missiles into the house before storming the ruins. By the end, Uday and Qusay lay dead, along with Qusay's 14-year-old son, Mustafa, who had bravely, or recklessly, fired an AK-47 at the soldiers as his family's last defender. The demise of Saddam's sons didn't just eliminate two of Iraq's most hated figures. It wiped out the next generation of the Hussein ruling clan in one bloody swoop. For many, the sight of their bloodied bodies, grim images that the U.S. military controversially released on TV, was the final symbol that Saddam's era and his family's grip on Iraq was over for good. Chapter 2. Daughters. When Saddam's regime fell, his wife and daughters scattered across the Middle East, becoming figures of intrigue and, in some cases, targets of legal pursuit. Saddam's eldest daughters, Ragad and Rana Hussein, escaped Iraq with their 9 children in July 2003, eventually receiving asylum in Jordan under King Abdullah's protection. For two women who grew up as Iraqi princesses, it was a humbling transition. Just weeks earlier, they'd been found living in a modest Baghdad house with no electricity, far from the palaces they once knew. In Amman, Ragad, then 35, and Rana, 33, tried to rebuild a private life. Rana kept a low profile, but Ragad, often dubbed Little Saddam for her fiery temperament, could not resist the spotlight. She became the family's unofficial spokeswoman, defending her father's legacy in interviews and even coordinating his legal defense team from exile. This outspokenness soon put Ragad in the crosshairs of Iraq's new authorities. The post-war Iraqi government accused her of bankrolling insurgents and put her on an Interpol wanted list in 2007 on charges of inciting terrorism. Jordan pointedly refused to hand her over, with officials flatly stating that Ragad was a guest of the king and would not be extradited. To this day, she remains in Amman, out of Iraq's reach, despite multiple arrest warrants. In 2018, Baghdad even listed Ragad among its most wanted, alongside ISIS militants, a move both startling and indicative of her perceived influence back home. Chapter 3. Wives. Saddam's wife, Sajida Talfa, also fled Iraq as the regime crumbled. Sajida, who was Saddam's first wife and the mother of his 5 children, initially escaped to Syria, then reappeared in Doha, Qatar by 2004. There, she lived quietly under the radar, far from the public eye. Her exact whereabouts later became a mystery. Rumors of her death even surfaced years later, though unconfirmed. Saddam's youngest daughter, Hala, vanished into obscurity as well. In 2003, Hala's husband, General Kamal Mustafa al-Tikriti, surrendered to U.S. forces. He was later convicted by an Iraqi court. Hala herself stayed completely out of the spotlight. Her location remained so secret that, for a time, even Saddam's biographers weren't sure if she was in Qatar with her mother or elsewhere. Saddam's second wife, Samira Shabandar, managed to carve out a new life in exile too. Often described as his mistress-turned-wife, Samira fled Iraq during the war and was later reported to be living comfortably in Beirut, Lebanon, along with Saddam's rumored youngest son, Ali, the only perpetrated Hussein child who survived the war. Unlike Sajida, who was placed on an Iraqi wanted list for alleged crimes, Samira stayed under the radar and avoided the political and legal storms. For Saddam's wives and daughters, the post-2003 reality was a dramatic reversal of fortune. They went from being Iraq's royal family to stateless exiles, some facing international warrants, others trying to disappear into quiet anonymity. Yet their surname ensured that escaping scrutiny would be nearly impossible, even as they tried to start over abroad, be it in Jordan's capital or the gilded neighborhoods of Beirut. The world's eyes never strayed from the Hussein women and the question of what became of them. Chapter 4. Grandchildren. Want to understand the world better? Start with history and subscribe to our channel. The collapse of Saddam's dynasty did not spare the next generation or the wider Hussein clan. In fact, the dictator's grandchildren and relatives saw their lives upended in extraordinary ways. Some met tragic ends, while others adopted new identities in far-off lands, trading opulence for obscurity. One stark example was Saddam's 14-year-old grandson, Mustafa, Qusay's son, who died alongside his father and uncle in that 2003 Mosul showdown. Incredibly, Mustafa was said to be the last man, or rather boy, standing. U.S. officials recounted he kept firing at the soldiers even after Uday and Qusay were killed, until he too was shot in the head in the furious battle. The image of a lone teenager defiantly making a last stand for the Hussein name became a somber symbol. The dynasty's final heir went down in flames with his elders. Most of Saddam's other grandchildren were much younger and survived the war, but their lives were irrevocably changed. Ragad's 5 children, for instance, grew up in Jordan as part of the exiled Hussein circle. They lived under tight security and away from the media, at least until recently. In 2023, Ragad's daughter, Harir Hussein Kamel, one of Saddam's granddaughters, made headlines when she emerged from years of private life to attend a Cartier luxury event in Dubai. The sight of a Hussein granddaughter in public, dressed in high fashion, set off a frenzy, a reminder that even the younger generation cannot escape the spotlight. Harir, now an adult, has cautiously begun engaging with the public. Notably, she praised her grandfather, Saddam, on Instagram, calling him hero of heroes, and penning memoirs seeking to defend her family's name. But tellingly, she and her siblings carry the surname of their father, Hussein Kamel al-Majid, rather than Hussein, underscoring a need to distance themselves from the legacy that once afforded them privilege. Instead, many of Saddam's relatives have changed their names, locations, and life stories over the past 2 decades. They went from living in villas and presidential compounds to living under assumed names in foreign cities. As one account put it, Saddam's daughters and their children, once accustomed to extravagant wealth, ended up living in a basic Baghdad home without power right after the regime fell, and later in far humbler circumstances abroad. The gilded Hussein lifestyle evaporated almost overnight. Chapter 5: Extended Family. Meanwhile, Saddam's extended family, the broader al-Takriti clan that once formed his inner circle, largely met grim fates. His three half-brothers, who had wielded enormous power under the regime, all landed in prison or worse. Barzan Ibrahim al-Takriti, Saddam's half-brother and former intelligence chief, was captured, put on trial, and executed by hanging in 2007. His decapitation during the bungled execution made news worldwide. Another half-brother, Sabawi Ibrahim al-Takriti, who had headed Iraq's secret police, died of cancer in custody in 2013 while serving a life sentence for crimes against humanity. The youngest half-brother, Watban Ibrahim al-Takriti, a former interior minister, spent years in prison until succumbing to illness behind bars in 2015. Behind them, Saddam's infamous cousin, Ali Hassan al-Majid, also known as Chemical Ali, was hanged in 2010 after being convicted of genocide for the chemical gas attack on Kurdish civilians. The once mighty family network that enjoyed Saddam's patronage was systematically hunted down, prosecuted, and eliminated by the new Iraqi state. Those few relatives who avoided prison did so by disappearing entirely from public view. Some allegedly assumed new identities and fled Iraq to live quietly in the Gulf or Europe, knowing that any association with the Hussein name could endanger their lives. The contrast is stark. This was a family that, in Saddam's heyday, enjoyed luxury and untouchable status. Yet today, most of its members live in fear or anonymity, if they live at all. But what do you think? Was Saddam Hussein's family unfairly punished for his crimes? Or did they get exactly what they deserved? Let us know in the comments below. Here's another video history buffs enjoyed watching. Goodbye for now.